guys, this is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, ending eating disorders using nothing but our own brains. And so excited to have you here today to witness another just incredible person who has gained freedom from going to a place where a lot of times we don't know that there's hope. We don't know that there's an answer. We're just, along trying to find something, to really finding what works and doing what works. And then just how different and how much more like tangible and real and like wonderful life is when we're not in this prison anymore. And coming from years of binge eating and bulimia and now being completely free myself, like I know just like how good life is, like to be free. And a lot of times when we've spent so long in this cycle, we forget what freedom feels like, or we've never felt it, right? Like it's been our whole lives that way. So our mission is just to free everyone who wants to be free, because we know exactly how to do it. And it's just about putting those things into place to do what really works to have freedom. And excited for you guys to witness another amazing person who has come triumphant through such a journey. And you guys, we have the amazing Julia Smith on the show today. Julia, welcome on. So fun to see you. Hi.
Lydia.
So fun to have you on. Thank you for being here to share your story. So Julia, why don't you start out? Tell us a little bit about you and like your backstory. Like tell us a little bit about when sort of this relationship with food started, changing and becoming disordered, and give us a little background about you.
When did it start? Wow. I think it was my teenage years. I used to stay up late, like a lot of teenagers do, and eat a lot of food when I did that. Watch TV and eat a lot of food. I remember starting to be confused about food really early on. My dear mother has been a health food person for as long as I've been alive. So I was born in the early 60s, and we were eating whole wheat bread and salads, and like my mom was all with that from as far back as I can remember. And so I was always like sort of the weird kid, well, at least when it came to that. But I think it's interesting that, I think a lot of my problems with food got all tied up in the natural health food industry and movement as well, right? That I think in particular, this was set up in my home, though, not by the industry per se, but that there's bad foods and good foods, right? And so, I can really see it now, this idea that we have to rein ourselves in, we have to hold ourselves back, it just makes me laugh to think that, the human being is this crazy gluttonous thing that has to be reined in, and yet I guess that's the philosophy for a lot of things. Anyway, so through my teens and 20s, a lot of binging, overeating. I was never a purger. I was relatively physically active as a young person and throughout my 20s, but I never got into anything like over exercising or anything like that. And then I actually married a binge eater. I don't think he would have said that. And he's passed on now, but I don't think he would. I don't know. Anyway, it was kind of like, it was a way of sharing. It was something that we shared without ever consciously. I think we often would talk about how we should change our eating habits, but it was always about what kinds of foods, and it was never really about the behavior at all. And I struggle a little bit with, was I a binge eater or was I just an overeater? I have struggled with that. It doesn't matter. It's all about not being free. It's about being in a prison. And I've done a lot of self-help over the years. as a teenager, I took transcendental meditation. A lot of people watching may remember TM, and I always pursued these things as a kind of a magic bullet or a silver bullet, that if I just do this, my life will be on track. And, that was for all things. And, that continued for up until a couple of months ago, right? I started your
Yeah.
program in mid-May. So, and I graduated just a month ago.
Yeah. So after just a couple of months, like how much can change, which is amazing. But I mean, your story here and your history, Julia, I mean, there are some great things to bring awareness to. So the first is, I mean, just this idea, like you said, of, the human being is this glutton that needs to be, reined in. That is such a widely, spread belief of like, we are just out of control, especially when we're binge eating. We really have this feeling of like, well, I see what I'm like when I just let go of control a little bit. I'm just binging. So what if I really let go of control? Well, then I would go crazy. So we better rein that in, and just like more restriction and more, that's the bad food, right? Because that's the one that makes me binge. I'm putting that in quotes, like all of that. And, that interesting dynamic with like you and your husband of binging together. A lot of times it's sort of this, we find people who there's that sort of that same frequency. And there are mothers and daughters who binge together, and there are friends who binge together. And it's sort of like this, oh, we've got to do something about this, but you're sort of sharing your secrets, you're sharing that thing that's, destructive, but it feels like community, a lot of dysfunctional, lots of stuff, is based off of things like that. So just so much just rich experience in your story. Absolutely. And, that silver bullet feeling of like, well, let's just do the next thing. Let's just do the next thing. We're almost there, well, this will be the thing. And it's like this never ending treadmill. Absolutely. So, I mean, when you first, came and found us and our world of, freedom, I mean, where were you at with food? I mean, like, how were you feeling from day to day? Like, what was your relationship with food like at that point?
I had done a kind of an interesting thing back in the about 13 or 14 years ago. I decided to give up white sugar, or just sugar altogether. And it was a process. I think for the first few weeks, I ate a lot of artificially sweetened foods. Maybe not a lot, but, and honey and maple syrup. And then I just gradually got rid of all of that. And that lasted for 4 years, during which time I put on 35 pounds. So here again, the bad food, there's a lot of bad foods, but the worst food is sugar, right? And so I eliminated it, and wow, look what happened. I gained weight. I lost a lot of faith and hope. And that's, that's why I eventually gave it up. Anyway, but the idea of restricting was still always there. Like somehow I just didn't do that right. Somehow giving up the sugar, that was, it was my fault that it didn't work. What even did I mean by work, right? Oh, I was looking for freedom. Now I know what I was looking for. I was looking for freedom. I didn't even know really what that felt like. So, so it was, so restricting. And I think I said to you at one point during the program, I restricted flour and sugar 60 pounds ago. It's
yeah, exactly.
So restricting that stuff and then binging on it, or having cheat day or weekend, or just that kind of stuff, going on and exploring gluten-free or wheat-free, or just I actually had been a vegetarian and then a vegan for 8 or 9 years in my 20s, and I thought that was the magic bullet. And I remember during the time I was a vegan, I was a waitress, and I was serving food at a party, and I was well into veganism. I was like 18 months into veganism, and we were serving these sausage and peppers in a bun, and I went into a bathroom. It was in a building. It was both inside and outside. Anyway, I went into a bathroom with this one thing, this sausage, and ate the whole thing in the bathroom, like shoved it into my mouth. Now, and that's when I was a vegan, right? That didn't happen a lot when I was a vegan, but there was just always this idea that I wasn't doing food right. And because I wasn't doing food right, I had to binge or eat the wrong things. And that eventually I would figure out how to do food right. And maybe part of doing food right is to restrict salt, flour, and sugar. Yeah. So when I got to your program, I was just about to sign up with a program that was very restrictive. And and I'd also been in Overeaters Anonymous. I had attended Overeaters Anonymous meetings for 6 or 7 years, fairly regularly for about 3 or 4 years in there.
Mm-hmm.
And, they don't espouse any program, but they do, there is abstinence, right? So I'm not speaking for the program, and I'm not speaking for anyone in it, but from where I sit now, abstinence means restriction. And so, so it seemed like it was always just like, I've just got to restrict in the right way. There's a perfect way to restrict that will last and that will work. And I was very, very tired.
Yeah. Is that just exhausting?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of years of that, right? And it's just like, how did it sort of get worse? Is it's just like year after year after year of being so exhausted and trying, and this will be the perfect thing. And then with everything, it being a reflection on you, like, I did it wrong. I'm not doing it right. There's something wrong with me, right? I mean, in what ways did that wear on you? Like, how is that impacting you just in other areas of life to have that constant exhaustion and shame?
Well, I think it had a lot to do with my marriage breaking up. I think it had a lot to do with, some of the challenges I had as a parent, as a co-parent, and then a single parent. And my kids are in their mid-20s now, and they're awesome. They're great. I feel like I just expended a lot of energy in, now I hear it now, calling out the chatter, a lot of energy raging at myself and blaming myself in really, really harsh ways, so harsh. And until I started your program and started to hear that and see that, I mean, I can only imagine that was inside, it was going on. So no wonder I was exhausted, and no wonder so many of us are exhausted from that.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Because like you said, it was still there, right? That's a very common theme that comes up with, these women getting free, is that, wow, like that used to all be inside. Like, I was just tearing myself apart and beating myself down every day. And we're blind to knowing what that is. We just feel it. We just feel the exhaustion, and we feel the shame, and we feel the self, just abuse and we're emotionally experiencing it and trying to sort of like, deal with that without really knowing that that's the thing, right? So getting that out is a huge relief, but, knowing that that's what's been happening. I mean, no wonder you were exhausted, right? That's a lot of years of, that's no fun to be saying to yourself. Yeah. Absolutely. And for you, is there anything else that really sort of represented, or, we want to honor just where you've come from? Like anything else that was just a big way that this was impacting you, Julia, to have this battle with food for so long?
It ruined my career as a fitness instructor. And I say that as if that it's outside myself, but it was all big. I think it was a big part of both burning out as a fitness instructor. And then, like I couldn't manage the burn. I couldn't manage my behavior um, and my decisions, which led me then, I believe, to burnout. Right. And so then the only way to deal with the burnout that I could see was to leave everything behind. So, and in an eclectic life, in a quite a varied life, teaching yoga, teaching Pilates, and teaching something called the Nia technique. I did that for 13 years. That was the longest career I ever had. And that just the food and the food brain eventually was a big part of that not being in my life anymore at all. Yeah. And, because I was a fitness instructor who was visibly gaining weight. I mean, that was the most obvious thing. That was the most blatant thing. I was a fitness instructor who was obviously gaining weight and then ultimately overweight in front of her class. And that was so hard when that was happening. That was like the last 3 years of that 13-year period, 3 or 4 years. Yeah. After I turned 40. Surprise, surprise. Anyway.
Absolutely. And, one thing that happens is, we're trying to keep our head above water for so long. Yes. And then we turn 40 or we get injured or something hard happens in life. And then all of a sudden, the energy that just kept us above water, we start dipping under, right? Mm-hmm. It's like your metabolism slows down after 40. And then all of a sudden what you were doing before is not quite keeping you there. And then the rapid weight gain starts, right? Or we just are in disordered eating for so long that our metabolism breaks. Or all of a sudden we go into, a point of depression, or, we get injured and we can't over-exercise anymore. Like eventually something, when you're just holding on by a thread, eventually the thread breaks. And like you said, like that's so hard. It's so hard to just see everything crumbling. And I mean, so many of us gave up a huge piece of who we were in order to try to just preserve ourselves. Like, well, I can't do this fitness career anymore because I can't control myself around food. I can't be in this marriage or relationship. I can't be in this job. I can't be in this city. I mean, so many of us have moved cities, moved countries because, well, this is everything that I love, but this is not survivable. So I have to change something. And it's the hardest thing ever to see it with all the change and all the sacrifice not go away, to like still be there. Yeah. That's such an important thing to bring up. Anything else on your mind just on that side of that journey that you want to share?
I always somehow knew I've always been a magic bullet or a silver bullet seeker. I think we all are.
Yeah.
But I hardly ever dieted, and I didn't, as I said already, I didn't purge. I knew that it was about up here. I knew that it really wasn't about food. Somehow, on some level, I knew that. And I had studied, like I said, a lot of self-help. Again, I was looking to heal or whatever. I don't necessarily like to use that word, but I was looking to move out of or progress and just become a better person and a more sane person. And then I really felt that would trickle down into food, or that would, and it, despite pursuing quite a few things, I did a lot of the work of Byron Katie. I did, like I said already, Overeaters Anonymous, and a few other things. It never happened until your program. So
yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the side of freedom. Yeah. I'm so excited to celebrate you. Okay, so what would you say, like just describe freedom a little bit. Like you said, what I realized that I was looking for all along was freedom. Describe what that freedom was like, Julia. Like describe, what does that mean for you, feel for you, look like for you?
Freedom is eating whatever I want, whenever I want, however much I want, under whatever circumstances I want. And no matter how I might feel about it in the moment, leading up to it, in the moment, shortly after, moving on, moving on. And so that's the big picture of it. What it felt like in more immediate, I remember just a few days into the program going to the grocery store and feeling like it was a whole new place because I could buy whatever I want. I hadn't realized how my restrictions had restricted me from foods that weren't even necessarily bad foods, but foods that I just didn't eat because I don't even know why. It was like too much trouble to prepare them or whatever, but it wasn't. So that my restrictive mind, my food restrictive mind, had left out a bunch of food, a lot of food.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, this is so beautiful. So just like that freedom of being able to do what you want and be okay with it. And for those of you who are freaking out right now, because then, oh, wait, no, because if I did that, I would just feel okay with binging all day, every day. And that's not what I want. Let's just clarify. How is your, like when you do just eat whatever you want, anytime you want, how is your relationship with food different? How is the way that you just eat and trust yourself now different than how it used to be?
It's the move. I think the moving on is the biggest difference. It's just something that is an important part of the day to eat and eat enough. And when when I'm not doing it or when it's not important, I'm not thinking about it. I don't think about food. I'm looking forward to going to a nice restaurant for my birthday, and I'm sort of thinking, oh, well, maybe I should check out some restaurants, and I know other people shared this too. I don't like scrutinize the menu and make a whole project out of it, right? Does that answer the question? How does it feel? It just feels like I'm unhooked. I'm unhooked. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
And just getting your brain back. Like, how different is it to just not think about food? Like, it's just a non-issue. It's not a big deal. It doesn't take planning or thinking or obsessing. How different is that than it used to be?
It's 180 degrees. It's, I just can't, I can't really say how different it is. Other than just to say it's almost the flip side. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
It's hard. It's hard to say. It's hard to characterize. Other than, and I don't dread cooking. I don't dread preparing food. That was always like this huge drag, even though I also thought it was important to be good at it. And I come from a family of good cooks and blah, blah, blah. I don't dread it anymore. Sometimes I don't feel like doing anything and I eat, crackers and cheese, and that's fine, and sometimes I make something very elaborate and that's fine. So it's just, like I said, unhooked from, whatever that was hooking.
Yeah.
Eating disorder, whatever we call it, Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's such a beautiful characteristic of that freedom of just, you don't have something that you're hooked to, pulling you around, weighing you down, deciding things for you. Like, you're just doing what you want to do. And what you want to do, like your desires have just changed because it's not an obsession and it's not like a scary thing. It's just food. It's just eating.
That's right. It's like it's just drinking water. It's just washing the clothes. It's like the same. Yeah. And that was a big part of the early parts, and even now, was recognizing the drama, right? The drama queen within, and yeah. So
yeah, absolutely. And just to have it be just a normal part of life. I mean, man, I remember thinking that other people were making that up, and people just like, oh man, I've got to like eat something. I'm just like, what? Like, how is that not a huge focus of your day? Like, and it's amazing to just see when these things aren't a big deal anymore. And how has that just improved your quality of life or what you do or how you feel or what you're able to do to have your brain back, to have your energy back, to be unhooked.
Since I started the program, I bought a new home, and it was a little bit of a bidding war, a little tiny bidding war. I had to make, I chose it, I bought it, I moved. Actually, I think my moving day was 3 or 4 days after the end of the program. So, but I went through that whole, packing up, purging my stuff.
Uh-huh.
The dog has been diagnosed with heart failure. So she had 3 emergency room visits. And, but I honestly think I would just be a basket case if it wasn't for the the techniques that you've taught us. I would just be binging. I would just be totally binging, overeating, in order to manage that kind of stuff. And what really started to happen quite early on in the program was this feeling of, I'm getting myself back. I'm back to who I used to be, like way more fun loving, way more easygoing. And just like I had more creativity, more in the moment creativity. I had an encounter with an employer, I don't even remember, early in the program. And I felt like I handled it so well, and I hadn't handled interactions with that employer previously all that well. And I handled it so well. And what I actually did was I shut up and I didn't say anything. And I called out the chatter, and so there was none of that residual stuff after the situation was over, so it was just great. It is great. It still is great. Yeah.
That is so beautiful. I love that, because, that rising tide raises all ships, it's like, oh, well, yeah, cool that I'm not binge eating anymore, cool that, things have gotten so much better, that things have, come so far, or that I feel totally different about food. But then also like, oh, okay, so here's how I interact with my career and my creativity and getting you back. I mean, yeah. Julia, you're awesome. So like having you back is a great thing, just for you, of course, but then also the world. I mean, like for us to be, sometimes for the first time getting in touch, but sometimes getting back, like the people that we even forget that we were. Like, oh, wow, I used to be fun loving. I used to be creative. I used to be excited for things. And, this beats us down so much that we start thinking that's us. We start thinking we were somebody who used to be fun loving, when in fact, we're just a fun loving person that has a whole lot of stuff in the way. And then once we get that out of the way, then we get us back. How cool is that? I love it. Anything else that you just want to share about what freedom feels like, or what you're celebrating today?
I mentioned earlier about being a fitness instructor, yoga, Pilates, that I did all that very intentionally to make myself exercise. I remember I found the Nia technique, which is a lovely dance fitness. I went to classes, and very shortly I said, I have to become an instructor. So, and then I will exercise every day, or whatever. And since starting the program, I have actually found that spontaneous desire to move my body that I was seeking in the first place. I don't always follow the impulse, but it's like that, just that natural human desire to move the body is back, and I don't have to make it happen. Again, I'm not that gluttonous sloth that we all afraid we really are deep down. And in fact, we're not, or I was. I don't like to speak for anybody else.
Yeah, but that's such a common fear, right? It's like, oh, wow, I think things are bad now, but if I really found out who I was, that would be awful, to really know how awful I truly am. Because look, just this little thing bubbling up on the surface is I'm binge eating and I'm such a glutton and whatever it is. And then it's like, oh, when we get that out of the way, I have never once seen a woman gain freedom and not like what she saw.
Oh,
Never
yeah.
once. I've never seen anyone be like, oh, well, I'm not binging. I'm not bulimic anymore. I have all this food freedom and I'm really seeing who I am. And oh, I hate her. Oh, she's horrible. I can't believe this is who I am. I'm picking back my binge eating again. That made me a much better person. Like, I've literally never seen that experience happen. And so when we get back to more of our authentic selves, to moving our bodies and feeling good and being creative, like, it's always something where we can love ourselves more because there's more to love, because there's more us, right? Like, such a cool thing. So beautiful, beautiful. And we are celebrating you, Julia. I mean, you've shown up and you've done the work. You know what we say is, I mean, this is simple, but it's not easy. You
Indeed.
grow, you
Yes.
grow, you
Yes.
show up, you do the work, you go through ups and downs, you know, like you said, you had all this life stuff happen and, you know, you said you would have been a basket case. It's like, you use these principles. You made use of this, not only to transform your eating and your relationship with food, but to transform your life. And we celebrate you, and we are just so excited for you and love that you are just sharing your story. Is there anything else on your heart for today that you would want to share for those listening and, you know, looking for hope?
There is no price. I'm getting emotional. There is no price that you can put on freedom. It's it's our birthright. And you know, there's so much suffering in the world. There's so much that life brings to us that is challenging. I mean, I've had a relatively easy life, and I know many people haven't, and most people don't. And so for me to have been kind of keeping myself in that cage, what a waste of a life. You know, there's no price on walking out of that cage, on being out of that cage. Thank you.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. Beautifully put. And thank you for being so real and so amazing. And this is what it's all about. I mean, it's about that freedom. It's about, like, I mean, really what I want is for every person in the world, whether they use it or not, to have the key to their own cage.
Yeah.
Because no one should have to be in there against their will. And you can absolutely be out. We have seen it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And eating disorders are a needless problem that we can be done with. We don't need a vaccine. We don't need a silver bullet. Like, you've seen it happen. You know how it works. And thank you for being an amazing witness to that, and for sharing you and being on. And again, we celebrate you, Julia.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So awesome. I love it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's just amazing to have you part of this community. I mean, like, we're here together to be able to get that freedom. There's absolutely a way. In fact, if this is something where you've been thinking about, you know, maybe it is something just internally that I can do. Maybe I can be free. Maybe there is hope for me. Like, if you have that little spark, or even if you don't, right? If you're just like, I don't know if there's hope for me. Like, if you want to know, and if you want to find out just what you can do to be free, one thing that we offer as a service is we do free sessions for those who want that first step of clarity and freedom. And we get clear on a few things. One is exactly what is happening with this cycle and why you keep getting sucked back into it. That's such an important thing to know that a lot of people aren't seeing. The other thing is just real clarity about what freedom means for you, what you want. And then the third thing is, what are the missing pieces to get you there? And if you go to lydialifestyle.com/apply, you can book a session with us. We're not scary. We're awesome. This will be the best hour that you have ever spent on a better life. And if you are able to find a session, we get booked up really quickly, but pop over there right now. And if you can find one, snag it, have that be yours. You deserve it just as much as anyone if freedom is something that you want. Again, this is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, and Julia signing off. Bye, guys. Mwah.
Bye.
Hi, this is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, and after helping hundreds of people move from food prison to food freedom using only their brains, I am confident that anyone can be free who wants. If you would like a free session with our team, you can go to lydialifestyle.com. Would love to see you there.